Hey you guys, welcome to my channel. If you are new here, my name is Jessica and this is the Jessica Diaries. It's my little corner of the internet where I talk about what I want, when I want, because I will not be put in a box. If you're not new here, welcome back. I know it's been a minute. I've been under the weather. I'm sure you can still hear it in my voice. I've had a couple projects I need to finish. I had my class reunion. It's been a lot going on. Content creation had to kind of take a back seat, but I'm back and I'm excited to get into this topic. I saw this topic on a post on Instagram. It was by an account called like something different DC. It had something to do with DC. When I saw it, I immediately felt seen. Just a little backstory. The event that this topic came up at was an event where you share your unpopular hot takes. And that was someone's hot take, that Jesus did not suffer more than enslaved Black people. And I really wanted to request the slides because, like I said, I felt seen. This is something that I've thought a lot about, especially since I started to unlearn anti-Blackness and also unlearn religion, specifically Christianity. I went through a very traumatic experience at a church that I attended for several years that really broke me. It led to a deep depression, but not just the church and the things that happened with them, but also my relationship with Christianity, my relationship with religion. That also was part of it that led to that depression. That was about 5-6 years ago. I talk about religion and spirituality a lot, and I know some people are like, why is that all you talk about? My husband said, I don't want to talk about nothing if it ain't that, and he's right. I can't help it. I'm sorry. Like, when your life is centered around your faith and religion, and then you got to grapple with what it means in the context of being a Black person, yeah, that's all I want to talk about, because that's my life. Before anything else, that's my life. Before we get to politics, that's my life. That's why I like to talk about it. I'll be going more into detail about that at some point really soon. And I feel like this is a great precursor to that, because as I was putting together my notes for this topic, I actually came across a book, and I read it in 2 days. It was so good, by Dr. James Cone, who is known as the father of Black liberation theology. I'm happy that I actually got a chance to read it, because it has definitely given me, number one, more confidence in what I feel and what I'm thinking, and more confidence that I'm not doing something wrong by asking these questions, that this is what Jesus would want me to do. This is what Christianity, so to speak, is about. Truth. The truth shall set you free. So I love that I have that perspective from that book now going into this conversation. So that's a little bit of backstory about how I even got here with this topic, and the reason why it's relevant to me and something that I want to discuss. And hopefully, you all can kind of engage with me here, because I would love to hear your thoughts, respectfully though. That's that. Now, I think before I get into the topic, because it is controversial, I want to start with what I am not saying. By having this conversation, by saying the things that I'm going to say, I am in no way diminishing Christ. Do I have questions about it? Have I thought about it a lot? Have I questioned God about it? Have I prayed about it? Absolutely. But even still, with me not having all the answers, not really being totally comfortable with the reality of it, if I'm choosing to believe it is true, I still am in no way diminishing the suffering of Jesus. We love Jesus over here. So it's not that. Let's get that straight. I'm also not saying that people who disagree are bad. If you don't agree with me, that's fine. You're entitled to your opinion. If you disagree with me, I want to challenge you to read Dr. Cone's book, which I will link in the description box. I will also put it on the screen when we get to it. But read it, because it's facts. Whether you like the facts or not, the facts are still the facts. So if you disagree, I think you need to kind of ask yourself why, and maybe what is it that you're not wanting to face or confront. This is something hard to confront. I'm not a person that is like pro-Black for clout, pro-Black to feel part of something. I am pro-Black because I'm a Black woman raising Black children in a society, in a global landscape of anti-Black racism. We cannot escape the realities of that. I made a video about how you're not Christian before you're Black, and I stand by that. Becoming Christian is a choice. You don't choose the color of your skin. And yes, race at its core is a social construct, but it's a social construct that has become a real thing and real identity identity in America that has implications and that impacts a person's life. So we're going to just operate in reality here. When you think about being black before you're Christian, the example that I like to use is maternal health. Why is it that black mothers die at such a higher rate than non-black mothers when giving birth? Well, I've seen the numbers. This has nothing to do with you believe in Jesus or not. It's because you black. we know that exists, and it's usually like the super Christian. If you want black, you probably be MAGA or very close to it. It's usually those groups of people that have an issue with me saying that I'm black before I'm Christian, because they don't want to like face the reality because of what it would probably cost them in their own life. But anyway, let me get off of all of that. What I am saying though is that we as believers need to sit with this subject, whether you want to believe it or not. It does impact black people's faith, especially if you're conscious, woke, especially if you are more logical in your thinking and maybe faith is not as much of a part of your life as someone that goes to church. Maybe you don't go to church at all. It 100% affects a black person's faith in some form or fashion in ways that I don't think that the issue of race affects anybody else's faith, because we still see a lot of the same things happening, just in different fonts, so to speak. So I think that, again, this is a question that we need to sit with for those of us who believe in Christ, who believe the Bible, who believe that there will be some form of redemption for us. Because if you don't believe none of that, what's the point in believing? When you line up your life experience and then your faith, if you can't believe that this all means something in the end, something good is going to come from this in the end, then what? You don't have faith. That is the faith. That's actually what led me to approach this subject at my former church, because I'm like, hey, this is going on. I feel like this. I'm not the only person that feels like this. I know I'm the only person here in this space that feels like this, but this is a real feeling that a lot of people that I know and that I have heard of and that I've read about, this is a real feeling that they feel. And you're telling me that we're supposed to be bringing people to church, and the church is supposed to grow, and people are supposed to come to the Lord, but you don't want to deal with this. We got to deal with this if we're going to win souls to Christ. If you're thinking about these people, and they're as good enough as a group to think about as those people. So that's kind of what drove the issues that I started to face at my former church, because I was asking those questions. It was like once I got onto this subject, I couldn't let it go. And that's the subject of like blackness and religion and you know, politics, how they all like intertwine, and social life and all this stuff. I couldn't let it go, because I'm like, oh my gosh, I have awakened. I've had a revelation about my life in a way that I've never had it before. I was blissfully ignorant, and now I want the people who are like me to not be like that anymore, because it's better on this side. When you really test your faith, it's better. It's better. Who do you serve if you haven't had a life transformation that you talk about and you can't stop talking about it? We do need to sit with this question, and Dr. Cone agrees with me. So again, that's why I was so happy when I saw the book, because here you have someone whose life work has been the church, defending Christianity, defending the faith. He's a black man living through the civil rights era. He said the same thing that I'm saying. I'm in great company. Let's talk a little bit about the crucifixion, because when you think about suffering in Jesus, mine goes straight to the crucifixion, because other than that, people on his tail trying to find him and hunt him down even before, or right when he was born. He dealt with being hunted, so to speak. There were periods of time when he had his ministry open. He wasn't never hiding, but there was also because he knew that he had a call on his life. He knew what he was sent to earth to do, and I think that is a key difference from what you have going on with a black community and black people. We endure our suffering just because it has become part of our life, not because we believe that suffering is gonna save souls. So that's one key difference there that I hadn't even really thought about just until now, that even Jesus being able to prepare for his crucifixion, which was his suffering, we don't get to prepare for that. You come out of the womb as a black person, because of how white supremacy evolves. It's even coded. AI is racist. So how could somebody ever prepare for that. As America and the globe, as tech evolves, racism evolves. So you can't even say that we could ever really be prepared for what we're going to face. Jesus knew that he was going to die. He knew that he was going to be crucified, and that was the whole point of him being there. But what did we say about black people? Just going back to like general knowledge about the crucifixion, it was at the time the most horrific type of torture. Being crucified was a horrific death. There was nothing that even compared. That was, in those times, the height of suffering. With that, you have a theological, biblical, moral framing that Jesus is the pinnacle. Like, his death on the cross is the pinnacle of suffering. Jesus died on the cross for our sins. You haven't done that. So that's like how his suffering is framed. It's framed as unmatched. Like, there's nothing that compares to that. That narrative, whether intentional or not, places suffering on a hierarchy with Jesus at the top. Is this a conscious effort by the Christian church? I don't know. But is it even conscious that I think we're just so familiar, those of us who have grown up in church and know a lot about the church, know a lot about the Bible. We've read the Bible from Genesis to Revelation and even some of the Apocrypha. We don't even question the magnitude of Jesus's innocent suffering. But when we do that, we do place it on a hierarchy, especially to people who are not so quick to be believers, people who aren't Christians, people who don't go to church. They even look at it as a hierarchy, whether said or unsaid. So if there's a hierarchy and Jesus is like the suffering of all suffering, it does put him at the top. And as a result of that, white supremacist ideology continues to grow and be maintained and be part of the status quo, and consequently systemic oppression and racism, it keeps it alive because no one has suffered more than Jesus. So if you're a Christian, then you at some point get told, well, you just gotta live with it. Jesus lived with it. I get a lot of pushback on my passion for talking about these topics. Like, I'm always told, you need to let this go, you need to let it go, you need to move on. And I don't see how you do that. How do you ever stop asking the questions to get you an answer that your life depends on? At what point do you stop if you haven't gotten the answers? You don't. People won't admit that that's what this does, but it does. Like, if you can't confront your racism because Jesus suffered the most, then it tells you that, or at least I felt, you can't really deal with white supremacy. Number one, because black people aren't the only believers. There are believers and Christians. I'm saying Christian, even though like there's a lot to unpack with the religion of Christianity. But just for the sake of the conversation, I'm going to use that term, even though I just really don't like to use it anymore. But in Christian circles, you can never really fully address your blackness and your suffering because Jesus suffered the most. And even though people are not saying it, or they may not believe they're participating in it, it does keep white supremacist ideology. It keeps systemic racism alive because you can't confront it. If no matter what angle you're coming from, when you get to that part, it's like, oh, nope, you went too far. At the same time, though, I do believe like when we are talking about this, there is only so far we can go because we're alive. We're in the earth realm, so we don't know once we die. Like, we don't know what's behind that. We don't know what comes after that. So none of us can say that we have the answer. Like, I'm not necessarily looking for an answer to that. What I'm looking for is a conversation that will challenge the current condition of black folks in America. Mainly the descendants of slavery and people who deal with oppression, because I know there's like diaspora wars going on right now, but feel how you want to feel about it. Black Americans aren't the only people that deal with oppression. Our diaspora melanated sisters and brothers also deal with that oppression. Just putting it out there. But I'm like, if I can't confront this in church, where do I go? Because this does affect the politics. It's like you have to really have a mindset change. change. And that's really what I'm after. I'm after that mindset change that's going to actually change something material in our lives for the sake of the children. I personally hate the fact that we're still dealing with racism in 2026. I hate that. Some people believe, well, the boomer generation didn't do enough because the civil rights era happened and they were able to do these things that their parents and their grandparents couldn't do, and they got lazy. And that's why my generation, I'm a millennial, that's why we're dealing with racism, because they didn't choose to do something different or continue that fight and evolve that fight, just how white supremacy and technology has evolved. The fight has to evolve, and they didn't do that. So now we're sitting here because they didn't do that. That means, like, the black community, in my opinion, and based off of what I know about history, what I've studied, what I've read, what I researched, our condition has worsened. So you can't in one breath say, oh, we have all this progress because we have more access. That's really not access. It's a very surface level access. That means that we're doing better. It doesn't. We're actually doing worse. So we should have did something that we didn't do. And now a lot of people feel like, oh, we're going back to Jim Crow and this, and this. And it's like, I mean, well, what do you expect? Y'all keep trying to fight a fight that has evolved with the weapons you used all this time ago. And it's a lot of people because they're in the black church or they're super political to where they turn their brain off. So that's why this needs to be discussed. And this narrative needs to be discussed. It needs to be unpacked. And we need to ask ourselves the question of what do we do now? Not necessarily why. In the beginning, that's what led to my depression, because I'm like, why, God? Why? And then I realized, like, okay, I gotta be okay with not knowing why. But that doesn't mean that I have to accept it. That's the key difference. Racism is so part of America. It's in every system of people activity, to quote Dr. Neely Fuller. So we've really, in a lot of ways, have accepted it because we know the things that we've done haven't made the situation better. And now, instead of like dealing with that, we want to blame each other. But we're dealing with a system that literally is built off of the unpaid labor and torture, utter destruction of the black American community. And you think you're going to vote your way out of it? No. No. That's another thing. When I started asking myself these questions, I realized, like, nah, we ain't voting ourselves out. This is something different. This is something bigger. This is something spiritual. It's something about us. So I just feel like that's the questions and that's the conversations that we have, not necessarily the why did God do this. We might find that answer. We might not. But that's really not important. If we could deal with the other stuff, then we'll start seeing some change. And we'll start seeing some empowerment. I mean, I truly believe that. Getting back to the topic, because I'm digressing, going back to like the crucifixion, putting Jesus' suffering on a hierarchy with him at the top. If you really want to think about it and you think about the story of Jesus' crucifixion, his death, and then his resurrection, that's a whole different topic. Jesus suffered hours to days, whereas black suffering has been for generations with no end in sight. Jesus was resurrected. He didn't even suffer death for real. He conquered it. He was resurrected. Whereas black folks, even in 2026, we don't have an end in sight for our suffering. And that's something I think people should put into consideration when thinking about suffering. Black folks get mad if you call it out. So how can there be an end in sight when the people that it's affected by don't even see the plays anymore and don't even see how religion has been used as a tool? As I was reading Dr. Cohn's book, I would say that religion, specifically Christianity in the black community, is probably the worst thing that happened to us, because we learned, and I know that people came over here and they were Christian. Really, they were not Christian. They were Hebrew, but we know that it did come with some people. Having said that, those people didn't have freedom of religious expression, and their religion did get tainted or whitewashed. Look at what happened to Nat Turner. You think people went back in preaching that same stuff. We know that Christianity has been whitewashed. We know the tactics. I've read the book. I did a book study on, or book discussion or whatever, on Stamped from the Beginning by Ibram X. Kendi. And it talks about the different strategies that were used to really weaponize Christianity and keep black folks docile. But even besides that, though, you had the whole Ku Klux Klan. There was a religious organization. These men were ministers, many of them. White folks believed that they had a right to own human beings as slaves because of the Bible. So we can't just act like because some people came here with it that their beliefs weren't affected by the whitewashing of it and white supremacist ideology. That is why a lot of times you can only get so far talking to church folks about this kind of topic because they have been so conditioned to just read the Bible, trust your pastor, do not ask questions, do not read the Apocrypha, do not question God. It's wrong to question God. Like you're grown up with it. So that's why we encounter folks now who only will go so far. Even older people that I know, like, they're with me when I'm talking about racism because it's something they can identify with. They can see it. You can't deny it. But when we start unpacking the Bible in church and kind of like, asking those questions, they get really uncomfortable and then they change the subject. So there's not even a freedom in Christianity like what the Bible promises us. And there was another thing when I was on my journey of like unlearning. I'm depressed, I'm researching, I'm praying. Like when I was going through all of that, there was something that really stuck out to me. Like people don't want to know the truth because it's scary, because you might be like me and you might lose your mind. But once you get it back, you're gonna be so glad for it. That kind of brings me to Dr. James Cones's work. So he wrote a book called The Cross and the Lynching Tree, in which he connects the similarities between the cross and the lynching tree. And honestly, like, again, when I was researching for this topic, I came across this book for the first time, read it in 2 days. I have so many notes. I do plan on doing a full discussion of the book because his work is phenomenal. And it made me feel seen. Like, it has been so lonely having that experience that I had and then dealing with my faith and my Blackness, and just, I could talk about that for the rest of my life. It was so lonely. It still is lonely. And so to find Dr. Cones's book, I'm like, this is what I needed. So in his book, The Cross and the Lynching Tree, he doesn't at all diminish the role of Christ, but he just details, like, how could white Americans get up every Sunday morning and they're preaching the cross and not see how ironic that they're hanging black people after church? How can you, like, that is by all means a crucifixion. You're burning them, you're torturing them, you're shooting them, you're hanging them in public for everyone to see. It's an undignified death. It has become normal. In that book, there were literal quotes from people saying that hanging a nigger was like killing a flea, like stepping on a bug, like killing a chicken, like it's nothing. We don't even look twice at the nigger hanging from the tree. One look twice is that that's strange fruit. That's where the Billie Holiday songs come from. Like, the strange fruit was so normal, it wasn't strange anymore. And I'm looking at the trees because I'm just imagining walking up and seeing black folks hanging from it and just going on about my day. That's what was happening. People were in constant terror. Like, black folks would get lynched for smiling at a white person. Black folks would get lynched because the white person on the sidewalk that you were about to walk into had a bad day. This was a reign of terror. It was legalized. The media helped promote it. Photographers profited from it. They sent postcards. There's a whole coffee table book, which as hard as it's going to be for me to look at that book, it's probably going to tear me down. But I got to, because this history is being erased. And white folks don't want to talk about it. Black folks in the church scared to talk about it. Black folks in the church who got a lot of white friends or are married to white people definitely damn sure don't want to talk about it because it makes people uncomfortable. They want you to shut up. But then in the same breath to say vote for Democrats to preserve democracy and to preserve your voting rights, when people don't even want to talk about what actually happened. Like, can we do that? Because it seems to me that people forgot. And that's how we're in this place in the first place. And that is why some black people stand so 10 toes down on their rejection of the American government, on their rejection of the political system, because it's bull.
I think we need to be transactional voters. I think, yes, it is right when we are trying to get folks to register to vote and to go vote, and it is absolutely right that we remind everyone of our history, especially when they're trying to erase it. There are so many things that we must remember about history. What compels us to vote includes not only our civic duty, but honoring the ancestors. Get yours. Vote and say, I'm voting because I expect something out of this. You're not going to take for granted that I'm going to vote because I'm a good citizen and it's my civic duty to vote, so that you don't even worry about whether you're producing what I need because, we can count on them to vote because they remember the Edmund Pettus Bridge.
It's a long way until November. We got more questions.
You got more questions, but I tell you, if you have a problem figuring out whether you're for me or Trump, and you ain't black.
Do you support reparations for black people?
Opposing the LIFT Act. Give people who are making $100,000 or less as a family a tax credit, which will benefit and uplift 60% of black families who are in poverty.
So by default, it affects black families, but there's not a particular policy for African Americans that you would explore.
I'm not going to sit here and say I'm going to do something that's only going to benefit black people. No. Right?
It's games. It's benign neglect. It's documented. So everybody doesn't, like, some people just have lost their patience. And that's, again, why I think these conversations are important to have, because when you don't listen to someone, you lose them. And we know this. But it's just something about really getting down to the nitty gritty, as Yvette Carnell would say, of anti-black racism and oppression and the real issues. Like, people just want you to be quiet. And I just don't understand it. But going back to Dr. James Cones's work, he was like, how can y'all not see the similarities? A lot of black folks, mainly the artists, which I love that he included that as a religious theologian. Like, he talked about how the artists were really the courageous ones. Like, the black church gets lifted up a lot because it was a gathering place. It was used for community. It was used for organizing. But the artists were really the people that were telling the stories. They were documenting it, documenting the emotions behind it. The juke joints. All of these places played a role in survival for black people at that time. They were safe havens. I feel like we're losing that now. We don't even really have that leadership anymore that speaks the truth to power, because they're either funded by a foreign political lobby, they've been bought and paid for, or they really don't have the power like you think they do because of that, or they're trying to get their bag so they don't want to upset people, because I've seen that a lot as well. People just don't want to tell the truth because of who it offends, and we lose, especially politically. Dr. Cone talks about that and the difference between, he didn't say this, these are Jessica's words, these are my words, the difference between the quote-unquote leadership and political figures that we have now is that they ain't willing to die for nothing. And Malcolm X and Dr. Martin Luther King, they believe that our freedom struggle was worth their deaths. If you think about it, had they not died, we wouldn't have what we have now. Who's willing to die for us now? These politicians didn't even want to talk against Obama. They treat the government like they're God. Both sides. They treat white and black folks treat white people like they are gods. Like everything you do has to include them or include other people, when your folks the ones that's suffering with no end in sight, with racism that's advancing. Its technology is advancing. Dr. Cones's work is like, hey, that discomfort that you feel talking about that, you need to examine it. We need to examine it as believers. What does this mean? Because he's like, yeah, these pastors, these white folks, yeah, they want to come to the table and this and that, but there hasn't been any reparations paid to the victims of lynchings, their families. The Tulsa massacre victims died seeking justice. So, like, how long are we just gonna keep dying for our basic right to live and thrive? Why do we have to die for it? So when you think about Jesus dying, he died for the oppressed. So then the question would be, well, where is God in our suffering? Where is Jesus in the presence of the suffering of black folks? If your white counterparts and your other counterparts who also claim to believe in him are showing up. Where is he? Where's God? Because again, this has gone on for generations. Slavery itself was 400 years. It was torture. The scale of suffering. Millions. Not just one individual. Jesus was one individual. We're talking about millions of people. The full picture of the suffering. Chattel slavery, torture, rape, death, psychological abuse, no therapy, spiritual abuse, identity erasure, language erasure, destroying a family, dehumanization. So did Jesus really suffer more than black people? And so Dr. Cohn's argument is that God is not neutral, that he is on the side of the oppressed, but it just begs the question of, at what point does he tap in and intervene? Why do we gotta die and get to heaven to get it? And we can't even prove that that's what happens when you die, but that's what we're believing. That is the faith. And so, when folks are criticizing the black community, talking about we're this and we're that, we are the most Christian out of anybody. We're the most forgiving. We're the most peaceable out of anybody. Look at what has been done to us, and we don't even ask questions anymore. How could we be the enemy? How could we be the ones that don't have a moral compass? But that's just something I was thinking about when I saw this slide. I was like, yeah, whoever that is, that's my person. I wish they would have put their name. I wish they would have tagged them so I could find them and be like, hey, I want you to, can I have that presentation so I can read it? So if you are out there, if that was you, please contact me. I would love to have a discussion about this. Let me know what y'all thought about this video. Please, if you're not already, please subscribe to my channel. Sign up for Patreon, whether you pay or not, just because whenever I upload on YouTube, I post it on Patreon and it goes to your email. So you can watch it right in your email. You can download the app. You can watch it there, or you can just check me on YouTube. I know sometimes you can get lost in the weeds on YouTube. So that's just another way to connect with me. I hope you have a wonderful rest of the day or a wonderful night, and I'll see y'all in the next video. Peace.